Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Blacklist. So this episode started off with a fishing company of sorts being raided and having some stuff stolen from them, because essentially it wasn't like a regular fishing company. It was actually kind of a terrorist front, because essentially like a terrorist group had basically been getting some devices. Essentially they're kind of like timing devices. They can be found in bombs, they can be found in like traffic lights and stuff like that, but for their purposes it's mainly connected like to missile targeting and stuff like that. Well, because essentially what they end up finding out in this episode is that basically there's this company called Blackthorn who manufacture this thing, and then it's like, oh, they're connected to this group. Because at first they found out it's like, oh, these devices are actually American made, so that means we've got a leak in our defense system. Like, you know, like for them to get access to something like this, it means they've got access, you know, there's a leak in the system somewhere, essentially. And the Blackthorn people kind of point towards this dude named James, but James is just kind of a patsy. I mean, at first, like, you know, Wrestler was bringing all this information like, oh yeah, it's this, and this. And it's like, wait, what? Like all this evidence is piling up. It's one of those circumstances like, are you serious? There's like so much blatant evidence. Like, would he, like if he's kind of the mastermind you think he is, would you really been able to find that so easily? I mean, granted, they're not saying he was a mastermind or anything. Because, you know, definitely, Liz kind of felt it. She was like, why? Like, I don't think it's this guy. Just something about his demeanor is not right. And then it's like, oh yeah, we also have a witness. It's like, you don't think it's suspicious that all of a sudden you have a witness. It's like Liz kept bringing it up. It's like, the fact is y'all went, I mean, it got brought up. It's like, well, they do conveniently come up with a witness, even though nobody said anything when you guys went there to kind of talk to him the first time. So it's like, all of this evidence just popping up all of a sudden, just pinpointing it, being like, hey, it's James, it's James. I mean, granted, like Liz said, he screwed up big time running from him, but at first he didn't know they were FBI, because basically he's going through a nasty divorce, so he thought it was connected to that. I keep seeing that actor. I keep forgetting his name. I think his name is Michael O'Keefe. Like the moment I saw him, I was like, oh, he's obviously the bad guy is. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm wrong. And it's like, of course he is. Just because out of everyone there, I'm like, why? Because I feel like more often than not, he plays bad guys. He just legitimately does. Or very like gray area people. I feel like they tend to kind of cast him as that. So I feel like especially a lot like over the past couple years, that's kind of, I feel like he gets typecasted a lot as that, just kind of like either a bad guy or like a very morally gray person. Like that's kind of interesting, and like that's what just kind of clicked in my head the moment I saw him. But I mean, but the real twist in this episode comes about when you find out it's like, oh, the person behind all this, because I went into this episode and it's like, oh, there's a traitor in the FBI. I'm like, wait, what? Because literally it was kind of at the preview of the last episode, when it was talking about the preview of this episode. I was like, wait, what? Where's this coming from? We're dealing with the whole Kirk thing, and now we're jumping to traitor. Like, where's that coming from? And now it kind of makes sense why. But the entire episode, like, obviously you end up finding it is technically the person is Samar. Like, you know, I'll get to that in a second, but it's like you could tell something was up with Samar. I was like, she's acting so suspicious in this episode. Just her whole demeanor was off in this episode. I was like, it's you, isn't it? And the fact that she's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna check out this out by myself. I was like, okay, that's super suspicious. It's like usually you and Wrestler check everything out together. So it's like, you know, because the whole point is to not go anywhere alone, because it's like it could quite easily turn into a trap. Especially when the dude was walking up on her like that. I was like, she's gonna turn around and know him. I was like, oh man, this is gonna suck. And he turned out, it's like, oh, but there's a plus side to it. They're not terrorists. Because, like, she had made this whole comment earlier in the episode, like, oh, man, I hate people who sell to terrorists or something. I'm like, that's supposed to be an ironic statement, isn't it? It's like, no, because the people who raided that fishing company to get that device is actually Mossad. She's actually working with them and trying to cover tracks for them, being like, you know, you guys go ahead, and it's like, oh, what about you? She's like, no, I'm gonna stay, I'm gonna buy you as much time as possible. Which to me, I took that as like, she's not about to leave or whatever, because for one, she does like her job and working with the FBI. Two, she has a Ron too, so I'm sure that's a big reason. But then there's the whole situation with Levi and his fiance. I mean, really, there wasn't much discussion about that at first, but then that kind of turns into conversation later on. But nevertheless, But the moment I found that out, I felt a little bit, but I was like, oh, that's good. I was like, oh, but it's going to suck because everyone's going to find out eventually. And they do, because I love the fact this Reddit brings up. It's like, oh yeah, this guy's actually Mossad. Wait, what? It's like, yeah, she's been protecting him. And not only that, Levi even explains things even further later on when it comes to wrestling. He's like, oh yeah, the fact is, Navabi tried to protect you guys. After it's like, protect us. Like, after she found out it was us. No, it was actually Samar who came up with the idea to raid them. It was actually her behind it. I mean, the whole reason, like, it's just the whole thing happened because it's like she was the one talk. I did not expect her to be one of the people there. That kind of threw me for a loop. I was like, I figured, oh, out of anyone, they're going to get Levi. I just figured why because I can never remember that actor's name, but I see him in a lot of stuff too. Like I think the first movies I ever saw him in were like the first two Mummy movies. Just like it's always stuck in my head because of that. But he's been in other stuff too. But that was just kind of a circumstance of where it's just kind of like I figured it was going to be him, and then it turns out to be Samara, and I was like, holy crap! So she was there. I was not expecting that. So, I mean, it's very. The timing is just so perfect because it coincides with Iran have to dealing with his whole deposition about his whole Alyssa girlfriend situation where it's kind of like, oh, how could you not know that your girlfriend was a traitor? He's like, because even he was talking to Samar about it, he's like, so either she's like, no, you see the best in people. And he's like, okay, so either I'm a terrorist or I'm just the most gullible person in the world. And I'm just a pure idiot. And she's like, yeah, you're an idiot. It's like, but that's the good quality about you. You see the best in people. But it's, I even love the whole conversation of being like, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't know that she was like, playing me, trying to get information like that. He's like, I just have terrible taste in women. He brings up one girlfriend that was apparently married and another one that had like some slight porn addiction or something like that. He's like, it's actually a funny story. But coinciding with that, and the fact is that he has to defend himself for not being able to see like a girlfriend was lying, manipulating, and using him, and now he has to kind of deal with it again because the whole fact is that Samara's kind of like, lying. Well, she didn't manipulate. Well, she did actually manipulate him because she was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna check out that clue that you gave me. I was like, actually, he's not connected this in no shape or form. So lying manipulated him. So it's kind of sad, especially because it's like Haran's like, I legitimately have feelings for you. It's like, but I can't be with someone I can't trust, the person I want to be, even if there's someone that I want to like spend the rest of my life with, get married and possibly have a family with. It's like, I can't do that with someone I don't trust. And it's like, it breaks her heart. Cause kind of going back to the suspicious point was when she was kind of like, oh yeah, it's like, once the deposition is done with, we'll go to dinner. You pick the place. I was like, no. Or was that celebration for it? Yeah. It's just like certain things. I was just kind of like, oh man, either way, I'm kind of mix matching stuff in my head. I'm sorry. I'm kind of getting the order of events kind of wrong. And it's like, I don't know, dude, it sucks because it's like they've had crushes on each other for so long. And it's like now there's always a possibility. She just kind of has to gain his trust back, and not just his, everyone else's. Because the thing is, because I was wondering about that whole situation, I was like, oh, has she always been working with Mossad? And it seems like that is the case. It's like her allegiances is to both. She enjoys and decides she will protect. She works here at the FBI and she will defend the U.S., but she also works for Mossad and she will defend her people too, because that's why she did that. Because it's like that in the wrong hands, in the hands of a terrorist group like the ones that were trying to get it, would have meant like countless lives. So it's like that's her reason for doing it. But it's like, you're not supposed to operate on like a different country's soil without their permission. Like you can't be doing. It's very super illegal to do stuff like that. So that was kind of the whole point of her kind of covering their tracks for them. And it was kind of an interesting conversation because it was like, oh yeah, like obviously her and Levi have a past, and it's just kind of like, I know you told me about you and Alma, and it's like, I would want to be with you. Like that's what I've wanted for the longest time, but I'm sorry to tell you, I'm in love with someone else. And it's like, yeah, it's like you and Iran all the way, no one else. It's like, no. You guys, I hate it when things happen. It's like two characters who totally like each other, and it's like things just come up that kind of get in the way. I mean, granted, this is a legit thing to kind of get in their way. I mean, there have been past reasons, stuff to kind of get in their way. I mean, a lot of those obstacles got removed because it's like, oh yeah, Haran finding out that his girlfriend is actually a bad person is kind of a good, thing to kind of get out of the way. Because I was like, I wanted any excuse for her not to be in the way, because it's like, oh man, you're taking Iran away from Samara and Samara away from Iran. They totally need to be together because they totally like each other. But nevertheless, The point I was going to make earlier is like I was trying to think like, before it was like revealed that the whole thing was Samara's idea. So she's just, obviously she has her allegiances to both. Which Harold does kind of was like, oh, you need to, your allegiance needs to be here. She's like, no, my allegiance will be to both of you. I'm not changing that. Like that's not going to change. But I think it's a situation where Harold is going to accept it. It's just like at the end of the day, what he doesn't appreciate the fact is that she lied to him. If it's one thing if she knew about the plan, was just trying to cover for them. It still sucked, but that's a lot different from the fact that she actually planned it. So it makes it a little worse. But I keep trailing off from the point I was making is I was wondering like maybe she shifted sides a little bit, like she decided to kind of do a little, non legitimate like Mossad work, like basically stuff without letting the U.S. government know that they're operating there essentially. And I was thinking what was going to happen was like you find out that's like, oh, she's been with them for like, I was like, oh, could it be like the whole reason why she was so pissed with Liz and wanted her quote unquote transfer is because she was just making some excuse so she could do like kind of do the whole Mossad thing, or was that kind of like a feign to kind of be like, hey, leave the FBI work and go work with Mossad again or something? Like I didn't know, that was just kind of running through my mind. But like I said, she like just has been working both sides always because that's just like that's her point, because I mean she is kind of a liaison, so that's kind of her purposes. So that was kind of interesting. I really do want to know, like we see what kind of an impact it has on Haran. I want to know how it is going to impact Wrestler, especially because he trusts her so much as his partner. And also, side note, it's because it's like Wrestler's very by the book, and when he finds out someone's lied to him and stuff like that, he gets super pissy about it. So, which he has a right to, but it's just like he's kind of like he's kind of a Boy Scout. It's like he's by the books, and it's like, yo, you did something wrong. I don't know if I can really trust you to have my back like that. So, another part of this episode dealt with the whole situation of Reddington and a little bit talking about the whole Kirk situation. It's like, because everyone's asking questions, like, well, particularly not everyone, but Tom as well as Liz, even Harold. It's like, why did he let Kirk go? It's like, I really thought you were going to kill Kirk. It seemed like that was what you wanted to do, and it's like, oh, you let him go. I mean, Liz is kind of, indifferent to it, I guess, but it's just like she expected him to kill him. It's like she thought that was what was going to happen. It's like, nope, you let him live. Because we still don't know what it is he whispered into Kirk's ear. He keeps saying like, yeah, Kirk's gone and Kirk's never coming back, especially now that he knows for sure that Liz isn't his daughter. So, and he is cured and everything. So, it does, it has begged up the question of like, what will Liz do now? Is she is she still interested in finding her father? And she's asking Tom, she's like, wait, what are you talking about? You told me to abandon the whole thing. He's like, well, yeah, but me being a father and everything does kind of beg the question like who my dad is. Granted, you could always ask who your dad is. You know who your mom is, and I'm sure you can find a way to track her down. But nevertheless, it's still something he's not supposed to say. He's not supposed to say anything like that to anyone. But for right now, Liz is like, no, I want to kind of focus on the present. They're moving out of the little fake place that Reddington set up for him because they no longer have to deal with Kirk. So she's not outright in danger anymore. So it's okay. Harold is just kind of pissed because it's like, Kirk is a very dangerous criminal and you just let him go. It's like, oh, that was your plan the entire time? I honestly don't believe that was his plan. Maybe it was. Legitimately with Reddington, as everyone says, you never know what he's up to. You never know exactly where his allegiances lie. Really, one clear allegiance is always to Liz. Maybe he has his own reasons for doing everything, but I feel like a lot of his reasons stem not just from a business perspective, like, oh yeah, I need to make money, make some kind of living, but I think everything he does is for Liz because he legitimately cares for her very deeply. So, even more so because we find out, go ahead and talk about that. Basically, everything Reddington did in this episode was for the purpose of getting Liz reinstated because Harold tried to talk to the lady that was doing the deposition for Iran, trying to talk to her to get Liz reinstated, but it's like that's not going to happen because the only person that could do that was the Attorney General, and the Attorney General wasn't willing to do that because it's like the last Attorney General is the person that she killed, and it's like, no matter the circumstances, she still pled guilty to that, so she still kind of has to suffer the ramifications for it. And I loved everything that, like, Reddington was doing to get get to this. Like, there's basically the guy that was working with the president-elect dude, Robert, and being like he ends up getting pulled over by some cops, and then Reddington gets in the car. It's like, oh man, with a .12, he's like, what? He's like, yeah, the drugalizer, like your alcohol level is .12. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, it's such a disappointment. I was like, it's such a shame. He's like, I haven't touched alcohol in like 20 years. He's like, I know, and it makes it that much more tragic. It's like, can you imagine the president-elect having a guy by his side with this type of situation? It's just, it's so sad. It's just like, I love how much, like, legitimately how much of an asshole Reddington is. It's like you screw people over and you kind of rub their faces in. I love it. But even all that was a kind of pressure to kind of have the conversation with Robert, to get an audience with Robert so that he could talk to Robert to kind of talk about getting Liz pardoned for that crime and whatever, so she can be reinstated as an FBI agent. Which he does pull off. It's just kind of like, holy crap. It's the entire episode you wonder. I was like, what kind of deal is he trying to make? It's like, oh man, he wants something from Robert. He's like, I thought we were good. He's like, I turned on Kirk and everything. And it's like, yeah, it's like, I gave you some money. And now basically, I ended up me kind of forcing your hand basically helped you in the long run, so it kind of got you in a position that you're in. So it's kind of like, do me one last favor. I mean, granted, he never said this would be the last favor, so who's to say what the future can hold. I really like the fact that his wife is like, it's you, and she's like, Robert, like, she's like, someone call security and whatever. Robert's like, it's okay, and he's like, okay. So he's like, okay, you don't want to help me with my favor. Okay, so how about we just have a conversation with your wife about all the business dealings that we've had. So that was kind of interesting. You almost feel a little bad for Reddington because everyone recognizes him immediately. Like, you're freaking Raymond Reddington. Yep, in the flesh. And it's just like, everyone knows him immediately. I mean, granted, he's like one of the most wanted people, like, around, like, in a lot of places. So, especially in the U.S. So it's kind of like, her being kind of a first lady elect, I guess. I don't know if that's the proper title in question, but obviously she would know who he is, especially because of the whole situation with him and Liz kind of going on a run, During that time, it was like, oh yeah, she's actually a Russian spy and stuff like that, at its tail end of season 2, the beginnings of season 3, the whole running period thing. It's like his name was plastered all over the place too, which I'm still coming back to. Like, we know that the guy, I forgot what his name was. He was the director of the CIA that was part of the cabal. Obviously, he was taken care of, and on occasion, I think that's his name. Is it Christina Lottie or is it Kristen Lottie? Christine Lottie. Essentially, he kind of crosses paths with her, which we still have that storyline to resolve because Wrestler knows that she killed that other lady last season and just can't prove it. That lady that he trusted a lot, that they all kind of trusted that she killed. I know that's super confusing. But essentially, I'm curious to see I'm sure that's still a storyline that's going to be in the makings to try and prove that she's the one behind all that. But at the same time, it's like, you still have Reddington working with her. It's like, I don't get why Reddington would. I mean, because he hates everyone in the cabal, but especially her because she's the one that put Liz in the situation in the first place because she released she had basically Liz's real name out there for the whole world to see, putting a target on her back. Like, that's the reason why Kirk was able to find her in the first place, was because of her real name being out there. So it's like, the fact is they still have dealings. It's like, it's kind of a mutual type of thing, but it's like, I'm surprised they would even, not less, Reddington's playing the lone game, so who knows. I just appreciate that conversation that him, like, Reddington and Cooper were having at the very beginning, where it was just like, yeah, the fact is that she's in this situation because of you. You basically ruined her life. That basically her life has fallen apart because ever since that you've been in her life. And then Reddington's just like, good conversation here. Thanks for the conversation. It's just like, oh, poor Reddington. I mean, to be fair, it's a situation where it's like, you can't 100% argue with that. Her life turned completely upside down because of Reddington. But at the same time, you could argue a lot of good things came about in her life because of Reddington. Because of working with Reddington, she got to be a part of the task force, and they've easily become like a surrogate family to her. Well, I don't know if surrogate would be the appropriate word in this situation. They've become like family to her, like, her closest friends and colleague. And at the same time, if it wasn't for Reddington, she wouldn't have Tom or Agnes right now. So it's like, there's give and take with it. I mean, granted, I still think the cons outweigh the pros, but then again, it depends on how much value you want to put to certain things. Because the fact is that she has a little girl, she has a husband, that, on occasion she is happy. She has family and friends, so, well, her family slash friends. So it's kind of like maybe that trumps all the bad stuff that's come about in her life. Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to say. So Reddit is kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time. So. But overall, a very interesting episode. I'm very interested to see where next week's episode will take us. This wasn't necessarily 100%. I guess to a certain extent, it was very story progression. I mean, it seemed like it was a very contained story. It's not like anything overarching was connected, but who's to say? Because the fact is, we have Liz back in the field now because she's an FBI agent now, and I'm wondering what. I mean, especially because Rustler is going to be like not wanting to work with, Samar now, so that's probably going to work in his favor. But like, oh yeah, no, I'll take Keen. Samar, you can stay here. Or it depends on if Samar comes into the office, next time or not. She's probably going to keep her distance a little while, or maybe she's going to stick around. The task force. Obviously, she's sticking around for just task force, but also because of her Haran. So what I'm saying is maybe she will come back and work immediately to try and earn his trust back and stuff like that. So I don't know. But nevertheless, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.